Hello and welcome to the Gameplay Cast review for the RTS game Battlefleet Gothic Armada 2. Battlefleet Gothic 2 is a real-time strategy game developed by Tindalos Interactive and published by Focus Entertainment. The game is set in the Warhammer 40k universe at the turn of the 41st Millennia, over 800 years after the first game of the same title. It has 12 playable factions, 3 narrative campaigns, as well as a co-op and versus multiplayer. The game released in 2019, and although I was aware of the original, I let this one pass me by. Probably due to the shocking state of my PC back then. Strangely, at the time of writing this, or recording it rather, it's almost exactly 5 years to the day of the original launch. And about time I asked that all-important question. No, this time the question is not, is it worth your hard-earned dollar? The question is, does this please the Emperor, beloved by all, or is this a vile heresy? Happily, the Inquisition does not need to be called, no Exterminatus necessary, as this game delivers, and here's why. Oh, and just before I begin, I just wanted to praise the RTS genre in general, and say that I really don't understand where the mainstream versions of these games went. But in this man's opinion, we need to get back to the glory days of games like this one. Command & Conquer Red Alert 1 and 2, Age of Empires, these games were the gateway drug for a lot of gamers, and they were awesome. RTS also offers great value for money, as there's generally more of a focus on gameplay than overly fancy graphics. A few more do seem to be seeping into the release schedule these days, and it's about time too. Though, Creative Assembly seem to have decided to cripple themselves in recent months by making and then cancelling a FPS survival shooter, was it? Bizarre.
Stay on target. We're too close. Stay on target.
Anyway, to business. The first thing that struck me is how awesome the game looks. Yes, RTS graphics are never the best, but inspecting the detailed ship models and zooming into your torpedoes to watch them strike the target in slow motion never really gets old for me. The graphics performed well on my machine, no jumps or glitches when zooming in or out, no slowdown, so all good. It's thematic, the backdrops all looked cool and sci-fi/40k, so no complaints here. Having 12 different factions and 3 campaigns offers a huge amount of playability. We're talking at least 25 to 40 hours to mainline the campaigns, but for a completionist, this game easily offers 80 plus hours, with a ton of replayability to boot. Moreover, I love that you can do multiplayer versus matches or co-op campaign by inviting a friend to join you. Could it be a more integrated experience like Warhammer Total War 3? Yeah, definitely, but it's still a good thing it's there, and I really enjoyed playing with or against my friends. Moving on to the star of the show, the gameplay. But let's start at the top, with the top level system map, which is where you build up your fleets of ships, decide where to attack, as well as how to develop and defend your planets. Unfortunately, in comparison to the Total War franchise, it's a lot less developed. I think more could have been done here, more fortification options, more ship designs, more research, and more level up options. These mechanics could have been elevated considerably by adding more things, like the ones I just mentioned, to spend money on and invest time in, all of which would have added some more depth and tactical decision making. As it is, on normal difficulty, I had a cash surplus after about turn 30, and resources were never again an issue. So it's a bit lacking in my opinion, though it does enough, and I suppose technically this is only a secondary mechanic. Where the game does shine is simulating Warhammer 40k ship combat. There are lots of great abilities, ships, factions, and battle options. You have engine speeds, boarding actions, torpedoes, nova cannons, my personal favourite, fighters, the list goes on. Suffice to say that you can choose the ships in your fleet to match how you like to fight and customise their commanders. Do you keep the enemy at range, picking them off with long-range weapons, or do you use a lot of boarding actions to neutralise enemy vessels from the inside? There is certainly enough here to develop a combat style of your own, though in my opinion, nothing beats the thrill of setting your ship on a collision course, firing off a full spread of torpedoes, and then accelerating full throttle into the side of the nearest enemy ship. Particularly if you have the bigger ship and just carve straight through them.
Ramming speed.
The problem I find with RTS games in general is that some of the more menial battles can become a bit of a grind, and at times that was definitely the case here, particularly when the auto-resolve is so harsh. However, the developers have added a good mix of random events, game types, and additional objectives that really add some spice to the battles and keep things interesting. Another great feature is the urgency counter. It pushes you to keep focused on objectives, otherwise you will pay the consequences as the frequency and strength of enemy invasions will increase. I like this because few games manage to inject any urgency at all, and although it's a simple mechanic, I think it's pretty effective. Finally, this brings me on to the set pieces and optional extras built into the narrative of the campaigns. Again, it's great to have some additional options to alter how the game plays. For example, if you deal with the Tyranid invasions and defeat the ridiculously overpowered Ancient One, you stop all the Tyranid attacks. Ignore it and they continue. You're constantly hit with new enemy invasions and distractions that you need to deal with or accept the consequences. And this is great. It really makes you feel surrounded and embattled and requires you to fight the campaign on multiple fronts simultaneously. Add all this together, throw in some characters and a bit of voice acting, and you have a great Warhammer 40k RTS game that's immersive and that all-important F word: fun.
Heresy grows from idleness.
Alas, I do have a few choice gripes with the game. Firstly, I don't know if it's just me, but I find the draw distance a bit limited on my monitor. I did get used to the zoom range eventually, but at first I found myself scrolling the mouse wheel, trying to zoom out and get a god view of the battle, and you just can't. I'd also apply this to the planet/forces management page too. You can't zoom out enough to see the whole system in a single screen. It's not game breaking, but it just makes things a bit more irritating. For example, the high level system view gives you information on where there are incoming invasions, but then you need to zoom into the system and scroll around to find the details. For me, the game needed a higher zoom out level in both the strategic and battle interfaces. The AI isn't terrible, but it's easy to predict and doesn't always take evasive actions, which tends to make it easy to pick them off and win. That said, the set pieces are more challenging, possibly too challenging in some cases, where the balancing is a bit off. Yeah, I'm talking about the Tyranid Ancient One again. I'm definitely not against challenge, however. I have two main issues in this department. Firstly, the harder difficulty in a campaign sense is less about tactical difficulty and more about increased frequency and enemy strength, so fighting more enemies with less resources. Once more, I'm not against the challenge, but I've liked it to be a bit more about tactical and difficult decisions than just more attacks to try and deal with. My second complaint is in regard to the leadership score and the resultant fleet size limitations. While not directly linked to difficulty, it certainly has an effect on it. The size limits placed on fleets is a bit annoying. I get it from a performance and balancing point of view, but when you spend the resources making a large fleet, I feel like I should be able to deploy the full strength. It also only ever means as long as you can hit the battle's leadership score, you deploy forces of roughly equal measure, the only exception being if one or both parties can't meet this maximum. Most of the time, this means that the enemy/computer essentially sets the values of every engagement. Consequently, I had a massive surplus of cash for most of the game. I can't help but feel that if I was free to make as many ships as I could build per fleet, I'd actually then have had to balance the upkeep cost versus my income, and that would have been a more meaningful mechanic. As I said earlier, I get that this is probably limited to keep the game as stable and as high performing as possible, but again, if Total War can do its thing with much larger scale battles, why not here? At least you're able to increase the default sizes in the menu, so you can improve this a little bit if you have a high performance machine. Overall, what we have here is a great Warhammer 40k RTS fleet battle game. Having all of the factions on offer and multiple campaigns really offers a lot of game time for your money. In terms of the actual combat, this is where the game shines brightest, and there are a ton of options, abilities and strategies you can use in a fight, and the game rewards with some really satisfying visuals, all finished with a sprinkling of variety in the form of the different objectives and map random events. Unfortunately, when you move out to the turn-based command/strategy phase, the game doesn't offer as much depth and variety as similar games in the genre. This is a real shame because I really like what they've done here, and if there was that little extra bit of strategy and customization in managing the planets and system defenses, modifying ships, more upgrades, as I mentioned earlier, the campaigns would be nigh on RTS perfection. Moreover, I'd have been happier having the option to make and deploy massive fleets, as this would have made resource management relevant, as the player would need to carefully balance the use of overwhelming force versus bankruptcy. Though I do understand this limitation is probably mainly to ensure a reasonable performance standard. That said, I'd definitely be interested to see how the game would play if the leadership score mechanic was removed completely, so you can both attack and be attacked by much larger fleets, and have some crazy large scale battles. All that said, the game costs around £30, that's around $38 on Steam for the complete edition, which, as I seem to say in every video, offers great value for money in today's £70 rip-off world. And despite the game's shortcomings, it's still a really good experience that both Warhammer 40k and RTS fans alike can enjoy. Therefore, I award Battlefleet Gothic Armada 2 a well-deserved 8 out of 10. The value for money combined with the quality of the core battle system and stunning visuals make this game a must-buy for any space combat RTS fan. It's just a shame they couldn't get more performance out of the game to increase the fleet sizes and add more depth to the customization and turn-based strategy side of the game. Maybe this is something that we'll get in a third iteration of the game, although having done a quick search, I can't find anything concrete to confirm that a sequel is in development. Tindalos Interactive seem to be currently mainly working on games themed in the Alien universe, so it doesn't look like a third game in the series is coming anytime soon. If anyone from Tindalos Interactive is watching,
Make it so.
if you want to check out Battlefleet Gothic Armada 2 following this review, it's available on PC via Steam. This concludes the Gameplay Cast review of the RTS game Battlefleet Gothic Armada 2.